I just want to talk a bit about SGCI for those of you who may not have been familiar with it, although I bet a lot of you are. So I'm going to make this really quick. SGCI is funded by the National Science Foundation to provide support to gateways in many different ways. And one of those is through support for building and running gateways, which we do through various kinds of consultation services, ranging from hands-on development to business planning, such as what you're learning from here, and sustainability planning, as well as cybersecurity and usability and several other like marketing related type topics. We also have a catalog that will help those gateways that have been built to let more of the world know that they're there. And it's a good place to look if you're looking for inspiration for your own gateway. Also, we do lots of education and training, and this webinar series as well as Focus Week are examples of that. We also have student focus programs which include internships. So if you're looking for an intern, do look at our website for that, as well as for the resources that we provide. And then finally, we really think about this as a community, and that's why community is in our name, because that's the way we share ideas and spread the word about good best practices and so forth. So our annual conference, which just happened in October, is one place to learn a lot. We did record the entire event this past year. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to our conference website and connect through to the YouTube videos associated with that. We have also a Google group, which we call the Community Forum, which is for you to connect with other people by asking questions or giving advice. And we have two ambassadors programs, an affiliates and partners program, and lots of other good stuff around their community. But I don't want to spend too much time talking because I want to hand it off to our presenters. But before I do that, I do want to say we would really appreciate your feedback about this. This is an unusual, especially an unusual presentation for us to do. But we always do ask for your feedback about the presentations that we offer in the webinars, because it helps us shape the future topics that we offer. And in particular, we do look at the question that we include for suggestions of new topics. So you do that. It takes, you just have to say what you liked, and then also if you want to, you can suggest other topics. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Juliana Casavan and Nancy Maron. I think Nancy is sort of in a backup role, but Juliana is going to be talking to you about marketing, and she's going to introduce herself. So for those of you who don't already know her, you can find out.
Yeah, hi everybody. Thank you so much. So I do want to make sure that you know kind of the 3-point people for today. So you're probably going to hear from all three of us at different points in the conversation. So I don't want you to have like a weird voice all of a sudden talking to you and wondering where it's coming from. So with me in the instruction today, I have Claire Sturham. So Claire, if you can say hello, wave, there we go, right? So Claire will be probably in the chat helping, and she might have some suggestions on the topic that we're discussing. She's part of the SGCI team. And then also Nancy Maron. So Nancy is one of the other lead instructors for Focus Week. And I'm giving her a little break today because she was on for the past 2 days, and I'm sure she is ready for a little bit of a break. But she always has great.
Thank you, Juliana.
Yeah, and I'm sure she will be popping in and sharing some good insight throughout the discussion. So for all of our Focus Week attendees, hello, lovely to see you again. And for anyone who is newly joining us today, nice to meet you. We're excited to have you, and I hope that this is a useful topic for you today. Usually we would have a couple of kind of reminders like Catherine delivered to us a little bit ago, but just something to keep in mind. If you would like to turn on your camera, we would appreciate it. We like to see faces and know that we're not just talking into a void. I am very good at talking to myself, so that's fine. But if I could see faces, that's always appreciated. And if you'd like to change your name, the way that it's listed on Zoom, to represent what name you would prefer to be acknowledged by, and a preferred pronoun if you so choose to include that, so that if we have questions pop up, we can acknowledge you appropriately. So for those of you, this is going to be kind of interesting because we are in the middle of a focus week. We're actually at the end of a focus week virtual session that we've been doing. So this is the Wednesday session. So for those of you participating in focus week, you made it. Ooh, today's the last day. Okay, so good job. You're here. You made it. We also have a final session tomorrow, though. So we have a feedback session this afternoon for those that are doing the full participation from 3 to 4, where we'll provide some feedback on your presentations for tomorrow, as well as any questions you might have on the sessions that we've had all week long. And we will have our teams presenting tomorrow. So Claire will be providing the rundown of who will be presenting and the order for tomorrow. And hopefully you will all join us to participate in either presenting or listening in, maybe providing some encouragement and feedback to the teams. So if there's questions about that, please feel free to put it in the chat, or we can discuss it in the feedback session this afternoon. So we'll go ahead and get started with our content today. So what we're going to really talk about today is why sales and marketing matters for your gateways. I know it can seem a little bit out of place when it comes to the scientific community in general, as well as to gateways, right? Could be kind of a strange topic. So we're going to talk about it in a way that matters for you. We'll also discuss sales funnels and how to actually make an ask. So we have a fun little exercise that we're going to do where you're going to be formulating an ask and delivering that to whoever that person might be. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then marketing strategies to implement. So what are some different marketing strategies that you could utilize, and how would you go about implementing them? So you'll walk away with a little bit of a plan on marketing, as well as a little bit of a pitch or an ask for support. So that is what we'll get into. But first, I want to start us off with a poll. So Nighty, if you can please launch our poll, or Claire, whoever's doing that. Thank you very much. So answer this question. What is marketing to you? Could be communication to users, a way to build awareness with a broader audience, important to your gateway, and evil as our last option. So just take a minute and fill out that poll. We'll see how our responses go. All right, if we can go ahead and we'll share the results here. Ah, yes. Okay, great. So there's not really a wrong answer here. Of course, the last one is just a little bit fun, right? But it is pretty often that we hear from the academic community and the scientific community that marketing and sales is kind of a dirty word, right? It's a dirty, gross thing that you have to do. Or that you don't do, right? So we'll talk about why you should do it, why it's important to you, and how to make it not so gross and evil. Okay. Oh, I just realized I'm not in present mode at all. Here we go. Hopefully that's better for everybody now. So in reality, all of these things are correct. Marketing is necessary for communicating the value to your potential users as well as your current users. It's not just a one-time thing either. It's something that you want to continually keep doing and needs to be happening all of the time. And it doesn't have to feel gross. You can be doing marketing and sales for good reasons, and we'll talk about those. So first, I would like to introduce you to a nice little sales funnel, if you will. So this is actually the work of Steve Blank. If any of you are familiar with him, he is the creator of Lean Startup and has some really interesting perspective on starting startups. Now, I know we're not in the business of starting startups, but it turns out that the sales process is pretty much the same when it comes to a startup technology business and a science gateway or any other product that you might be selling, right? You have to take your customers through this funnel in order to capture them. So this is called the get, keep, grow cycle. You could see it has 3 parts here, and we're really going to focus on this front end of it, which is the get portion. There are these 2 other pieces though that involve how do you actually keep your existing customers, and then how do you grow your existing customers to help you reach more, right? So it becomes this viral loop that goes back to the front. But I would like for us to stay focused here, because this is where it starts, right? This is how we start to build relationships with our users and our potential users. And there's these phases that we really have to take them through in order to get them to the point of actually becoming a user or a buyer or a customer. So you'll hear myself and others using some maybe business terminology today, because that's the world that we tend to live in. But think of it in terms of who your users, your customers, your audience really is, right? So you have to bring your audience in through this funnel, and it starts with building awareness. Now, there's lots of different ways to be able to build awareness with your audiences. And this is just getting them to be aware that you even exist, right? So in the chat, if everyone wants to go ahead and drop in, have you started the awareness building process for your users yet? Or you can tell me where you feel like you're at with the majority of your users in this pipeline currently. Let me see if I can pull up the chat here. Okay. So started in awareness and interest, started advertising at conferences, newsletters. Yeah, this is good. Okay. Presentations to multiple audiences, all of the above. Yeah. Leslie, yes, while secretly wishing I didn't have to. Yeah, I know a lot of us feel that way, right? It takes a special person to enjoy sales and marketing, and they're out there, right? But unfortunately, even for us who may not enjoy it, we have to do it pretty regularly. So in looking at the awareness building piece of it, this usually starts with things that look like earned or paid media. Now, in the scientific community, this tends to look a little bit different. I'm laughing at the chat right now. MailChimp is a whole another level of evil. I like that comment on there. So, but there's different ways to build this attention, right? And get this awareness piece started. And it doesn't have to be through paid social media ads or, clickbait or anything like that, right? Your pay for clicks type of scenarios. In the scientific and academic world, we actually see these things in a slightly different light. Things like conferences, and right now what looks like virtual talks, right? Virtual presentations or booths or whatever it might be at conferences that are happening in a virtual setting right now. Newsletters, listservs, right? This is a great way to earn that media, as opposed to, well, you could be paying for it, right? If you're also attending a conference, you might be paying for it. But I want to be clear that we don't want to get stuck in thinking about marketing specifically as these things like I have to have all these social media channels. I have to be doing all of these things that require web presence and click-through rates and all of this, right? It can look very different, and it should look different based on who your audience is. So we'll get into that a little bit more. But that first stage is really building the awareness. So this is making sure that people know that you exist. Then we move into interest, right? So this now is that point where they are aware of you, but now they're also saying, I want to maybe learn a little bit more about this organization. And it's clear, it's important to understand that these are clearly different steps, right? It takes more than just putting a message out there that says, hey, we're this gateway and we're here, right? To move them into that next level, which becomes interest. That next step has to be sharing that value proposition, right? Talking to them about what is valuable to them as a user or an audience member for your gateway, right? So what value do you actually bring to them? Then moving into the consideration phase. So this is typically where they're starting to weigh pros and cons and make a go or no go decision about purchasing. And where it says purchasing, I put this in air quotes up here because they may not be paying for it, right? But in a way, there is still a purchasing decision to be made, right? There's still a decision being made to decide to adopt your gateway or your product for them to actually use it, right? So we have to be able to move them through this whole funnel to then fully acquire them as customers or users, right? And it becomes this kind of viral loop. You want to do this over and over again with all of the people who are coming into your funnel. You want to push them through this funnel in order to capture the users and the audience that you're trying to attract. Okay, great. And I saw some other awesome examples in the chat about ways that you are getting the word out and building awareness about your gateway. So that's awesome. So we want to make sure that we are thinking about marketing as a strategy. So there is a difference between marketing and advertising and promoting. And they're different in that you're going to be taking different actions to do one of those things, right? So if it's just overall promoting, right, we're just trying to say, hey, here we are, here's what we do. And that's like casting a big wide net, right? And you want to see how many people you can get to just start coming into that, right? So that can be that awareness building piece. Advertising can look very similar to that, but it might be in a different setting where you're actually doing this advertising. We want to think about this though as a strategy. We want to use marketing to build a strategy so that we know how to attract users, how to draw them into that funnel, and then how to get them to move all the way through it, right? And it takes more than one step to do that. We can't just cast this wide net and say, here we are, and then expect everyone to fall into that funnel and just naturally move themselves through that process. They're not going to do it. We have to help them step through that process. So these different actions, right? Using marketing, advertising, promoting, and the tools that you're actually going to use to do those things help you to achieve different goals. So we have to think about what our goals are that we're trying to achieve in order to use the right tool. So I want you all to think about what are the goals with your audience and the get funnel, right? So if you're using the get funnel, what is that first goal that you're trying to achieve? So we're going to move through an exercise, and I'm going to talk you through kind of the pieces of it first before we actually get there. So thinking about the goals can be a little bit tricky at times, right? So thinking about what it is that we want to do. Now, if you already have a goal in mind, I would love it for you to drop it into the chat and share with us what those goals might be that you're starting to tap into or you're starting to think about when it comes to your marketing channels or your sales channels. Defining this goal and figuring out what it is that you're trying to accomplish first is extremely important and vital to doing this well, right? To making sure that you're using the right tools and you're targeting the right audience. We first need to know what that goal is really going to be. And a big thank you to Nancy Maron, because I stole this slide from her. This had some really great recommendations on here of what some of those potential goals could be, right? So what is it that you're trying to accomplish with your audience? So we see here we have potential users need to know about our gateway. So this is that awareness piece that we're talking about. So, you know, what kind of tool would we use in order to do that? Who would be the audience that we're trying to attract so that we know where we're sending that message? We want to increase the usage of our gateway, or we need to sell something to them, or we need to convince an administrator to support the gateway, right? So we're trying to talk to our administrators to give us more institutional support. What does that message look like and sound like, and how is it happening? Or we need to build a partnership with an organization. And those all look and feel different, right? It's not going to just be casting this wide net and saying, here we are, come check us out, come be our partner, come give us money, come buy our things, right? These messages all have to be strategically designed, and you have to be using certain methods of getting that message out to your audience. So I'm going to see if we have some goals here. Let's see. Users perceive the gateway as useful to them and others. That's good, right? Making sure that it's perceived as useful, that they understand what the value is, right? So you might be, Leslie, it sounds like just trying to move them from that awareness piece into that interest and that consideration piece. They need to understand that value that might be there. Attract enough contracts to pay for core support costs. Yeah, so you need to be able to get those contracts in the door. That's something that you can really set metrics on, right? We need to get X number of contracts or X number of dollars in contracts in order to support this, right? So now we know what is that goal that we have to hit, and where do we have to start, right? We can step back through that process to figure that out. Yeah. Increase usage, Mona, I see that there. Develop a community of users and developers. These are all good. Increase contributors to model library. Good recommendations. Okay, so before we step into our exercise, I do want to see, are there any questions right now? I'm going to talk us through the exercise, but I wanted to see if there's any questions first. I would love to hear someone's voice if anyone wants to bring themselves off of mute.
Hey, Juliana, can I make a quick comment?
Of course, go right ahead.
I'm just going to stall for you guys so someone else can think about what their question or comment is going to be. But in the meanwhile, I love this discussion, and I love to see what people's notes are in the chat about the different ways they're thinking about what marketing could be used for. And I would just use this as an excuse to remind particularly the people who are participating with us in Focus Week that this is a great chance to go back to your audience segmentation and the different value propositions and think about what each of those chunks of your audience or your stakeholders need to do for you to be successful. And once you answer that question, each of those things may tee up a different type of marketing campaign, like lowercase c. But if you know you need them to participate in a certain way, let's think about strategically how to get the word out to them and convince them that it's the thing they want to do too.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Were there any other questions or any questions from anybody? Please don't be shy. Okay, if there's no questions, I will go ahead and move on to our exercise. And if any questions come up kind of in this process, let me know, because we'll take a little bit of time to work on this. So I'm going to have each of you take about 5 minutes to work through this. So what we want to do here is we're really building a little bit of a marketing strategy. So there are some basic components to starting the process of building a marketing campaign. And I think it's really important to first set your criteria and set your kind of motivations, right? Your goals and your audience for this before you start to get into thinking about what words are we going to use? What images are we going to use, right? We very quickly hop to, well, we know we're gonna make a flyer, right? We're gonna make a pamphlet, we're gonna make a flyer, we're gonna write an electronic newsletter, and we're gonna send this out regularly. But we need to think about, what is the purpose of all of that? What is the goal that we're trying to achieve with those strategies? And how are we measuring them to then say, yes, this was successful, right? Alan, you asked the question about the sheet. Yes, please make a copy of the sheet. And then you can drop it right back in that folder where we have it usually. Okay. So for those of you who are participating in Focus Week, or who are not, we've been doing all these exercises and we have everyone saving them to a folder, but please feel free to make a copy of the, oh wait, this is the spreadsheet.
We have to have a folder. We have to have a folder to put it in, unless you
I'm sorry, wait, hold on. And this is the spreadsheet. So never mind. That's not what we want you to do. For the spreadsheet,
okay.
We're going to have you all jump into it together. All right. And everyone will create their own line in there and fill out the questions that are there on these different pieces. Okay. Sorry about that. I forgot that this was not the doc. This is a spreadsheet. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is define that audience. So for those of you that have been participating in Focus Week, you should have a pretty good idea of who this first audience will be, right? Who is it that we've been talking about for you the majority of the time, right? Who's that first segment that you want to be targeting? Now, for those of you who have not been working with us through these exercises previously, a little bit on audience. You want to think about this as a very specific group of people that you're targeting. So if the answer right now is researchers or scientists, that's probably a little too broad, and you want to think about it a little bit more narrowly. But right, we all need to start somewhere. So figure out who is that primary audience that you want to be targeting. What goal are you trying to achieve? So what is it that you want them to do? So by sending out whatever this form of communication will be, or having this experience of communicating with them, what action do you want them to take once they have engaged with your marketing? Then the third step here is what value is it that you are trying to share with them, right? That you're going to share to convince them that they should do this action. So you should do this because, right? This is what it's going to do for you. So this is going back to your value propositions, right? What is that value proposition that you believe that they care about the most and that is going to get them to actually act? Then the fourth component there is the channel. So how will you share this with them? I was very happy to see that a lot of the ways you all are talking about communicating with your users and your audience is through conferences and talks and panels and tutorials and you know, newsletters and all of that kind of stuff. So lots of different ways that you're communicating with them. Which one is going to be the best for this particular goal and this particular audience is the thing to think about. Where do you see them most often? Or where are they when they're trying to find this kind of information, right? When they're trying to learn about a new tool or a new method for them to use, where are they usually going or where are they discovering these things? That's something to think about. And then the last piece of it there is how will you measure success? So just putting a campaign out there, just putting something out there in a newsletter or a listserv or a social media post or whatever, or having a talk, giving a talk at a conference, that's not enough in itself, right? We have to actually know how are we going to measure that we were successful with this particular avenue or this particular campaign. So there's a question here. Alicia says, how big should a goal be? A single step in the process towards the value proposition, or could it be several steps? Yeah. So this starts to get into a little bit more of a nuance of a marketing campaign. There are these specific steps in that funnel, in that get cycle, because you do have to actually take multiple steps to move them through it. Very rarely does an audience member go from being aware to actually purchasing, right? It's typically not a big jump like that. They actually go through these steps. Now, those steps may happen, like they may move from awareness to interest to consideration within, 30 seconds or a minute. So, or, right, if it's maybe a big purchase or a big decision for them to make, let's say you want them to move from the current platform that they're using for publishing their data to a new platform, to your platform. That's a big shift to ask someone to make, right? You're asking them to make a big change. So it's probably going to take a little bit more time, right? They're not going to make that decision in 30 seconds or a minute of just reading a little bit about what you do. They're going to probably go through awareness, right? They're going to learn a little bit more about it. They're going to talk to their team members or their colleagues about it. And then maybe they'll move to that purchasing decision. So in that case, it is going to be a multi-step process. You're probably going to want to build maybe a newsletter campaign of some kind where you're actually sending them 3 or 4 emails over the course of a month or two, where you're introducing new information and then you're kind of moving them to that purchasing decision at the end. So I would say start small. What is that first goal that you want to achieve to get them to move to the next step? Right? So how do you just get them from where they are today, whether that be awareness or interest or consideration, and move them into the next step of that process? I'm happy to hear that helped with your anxiety. Yes, that would be a big, a big thing to take on if you were trying to build a whole giant like drip marketing campaign right now. Not what we're looking to do. This is just how do we move them from one step to the next.
Hey, Juliana, can I jump in for a sec?
Absolutely.
The other thing you may want to think about is how close you are to them and how much and how well you know them already. So if you're thinking about a situation where you're very new in this space and you just want people to know that, that you're on their radar or you want to be on their radar, then those kind of lighter goals make a lot of sense. Like I just want a lot of people to sign up for something so I can reach out to them when I have something new to say. Or I just want to scoop up a whole list of people so I can get started and share information when I'm ready to, that sort of thing. But others of you may already actually have a much more targeted, smaller group of key players that you really know already. And in that case, you can kind of leap ahead a few steps and do things that are much more direct with a known audience, or an audience where you have a known way to reach them more directly. It really depends on how far along you are in knowing who they are and how many they are and which ones you want to be in touch with.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So what we'll do right now is we're going to take about 5. Oh, we're doing great on time. Okay. So I'm going to give you a whole 7 minutes. What? That's crazy. Okay. We're going to give you 7 minutes to go ahead and work on this first one. So you can drop that into the spreadsheet, make yourself a line there. And we would just love to see this get populated, right? And we decided to do this in kind of a shared spreadsheet because we thought you could really all look to each other's to see, okay, what other creative ideas are people using for their channels and what kind of goals are they targeting and things like that. So go ahead and work through that, add it to the spreadsheet. If any questions come up in the process, feel free to unmute yourself or drop them in the chat. We will reply either way. So everybody feel free to take a couple of minutes.
I see a lot of people have filled in something, and what I would say is just so.
Nope, I think you dropped off there, Nancy. We lost you.
For those of you who have already filled out some of the lines, and if you're looking for something to occupy the next 2 or 3 minutes, I see a lot of folks have filled in the metrics by suggesting that at some future point you will name a number that will tell you if you were successful in your campaign. And that's absolutely great, but why not spend a couple minutes now even wondering what kind of scale of a number is going to be meaningful, and how you'll decide if that number is a good number for you. And again, the folks we've worked with already for this week know that we think a lot of it depends on what your ultimate goals are. If you know how big your population is, you have a better chance of choosing a reasonable and also ambitious number that you're reaching, whether it's number of institutions, number of people signing up, whatever. But I'd encourage you to think through what's going to get you to know if it's a good number or not once you have hit it.
Okay, these are looking really great. It looks like some people are still kind of working through, but we have a lot with a first pass there and some awesome ideas of how to do that. So what I'm going to do is ask for 2 volunteers to share theirs. So if you are interested in volunteering, please drop your name or just, say me in the chat. And we'll take 2 people to share. Thank you, Carrie. I need 1 more. The people that have been participating in Focus Week know that I will pick someone. So if no one else wants to volunteer. I can certainly choose somebody. All right, Corinna. Excellent. Tom, you were just a second too late there. Okay, so let's start with Carrie. So Carrie, if you just want to kind of talk us through, and so for those who are new or haven't been in our focus weeks, right, and don't know what you're working on, can you share just that, like that one quick little value proposition for SCORE? Or are you doing cubes?
Yeah, I'm gonna put on my cubes hat, but
okay,
because I think this is the one that like, and I'm gonna sort of cheat and put something that's sort of in progress, but it helps me to articulate what I'm wanting out of this event that's on Monday.
Okay.
Because I think a really big thing that we're working on with cubes is trying to attract more funding contracts and better communicate our value and our value proposition to not just those prospective partners that might give us money for our services, but also funding agencies as well. Like, so we have like, so we decided to do this event because our evaluator said, well, we could send a survey, I could go and talk to your partners. And I said, why don't we have them come to us? We'll do this 2-hour summit and we will invite our partners to share talks and posters and talk about how they are using our platform in order to accomplish their work and their goals and their, you know, they'll love this because they can share with more people and we'll build in a lot of networking time for new people to collaborate and share practices about how they're using cubes to accomplish their goals, both through direct partnership, but also, you know, other ways. And I felt like this might be like a win-win-win-win-win for everybody. We got our evaluation goals set. We're like, partners feel good because they're getting to show off. We know that like we want them to share practices, so hopefully they'll find a lot of value in showing up. And like hopefully we'll secure maybe some new discussions about new contracts out of this. That's what we're really hoping. There, you know, maybe even recruit people to work with us that might be out of people that are working with us already that aren't actually paying us for their services. So we're a more mature project that had been working on NSF funds. And so we were giving a lot away for free and we're like asking people to step up and support. And so that they're used to getting this for free and not necessarily used to paying for it. And so like communicating that value is really important in getting people over that hump of like, yes, I would pay money for this service that I've been getting for free until now.
Okay, so you had put here, and I'm gonna kind of highlight yours here in the spreadsheet so that people can focus in on that if they haven't found it yet. So this is great, right? I mean, your channel, obviously you have set up for this particular event. And now maybe you have a measurable goal to go with it or a measure of success there. Now, one thing that I would recommend is looking at the goal that you're looking for, like to achieve, right? So this is really asking, what is it that you want them to do? So if you were to think about what is that call to action that you would provide or that you want them to do? So you have in there, bring in more contracts or funding. So that's to me the outcome, right? You already have that measured in the outcome of the success. I would say, what action is it that you want them to take? So are they already signed up for this event on Monday?
Yeah, we so far have about 45 participants.
That's great. Yeah. So
yeah, I know. I was happy if I got 10 to the table.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So I would think about what is it that you need them to do on Monday that starts to move them to that success, right? Whatever that measure of success is for you. So the goal needs to be clearly like, I need them to take this action. So is it that you want them to sign up on this form to have a one-to-one meeting with you? Is it that you want them to I don't know, fill out a survey that includes a question about, being interested. Do they need to sign up to start having paid services now? So what goal is it that you want them to achieve while they're in that channel? So I would just kind of refocus it in that way. And that's great. And now you can measure it and see, did it work, right? Was this a good channel? Now, the hard thing sometimes is that a lot of this is experimentation. It's just a different kind of experimentation than maybe you're used to, right? It's not the scientific kind. This is the business kind, where you throw some things out there, right? You put out a hypothesis of, you think if you put these people in this scenario and you ask them to do this thing, that X% of them will do it, right? And you could be right or wrong about that. Right now, if you have no data to compare it to, who knows? But putting something out there to measure it by, right? What is that hypothesis of success? Then you now can look back and say, okay, yes, that was a successful endeavor, right? We got better results than we thought we would, or we at least got the results that we were looking for, or maybe nobody did any of that, right? So maybe by the end of this, Carrie, on your event Monday, you're going to be like, well, I have no meeting set up. Nobody wants to talk about this. So that wasn't the right channel, or it wasn't the right goal, right? Or it wasn't the right audience. And so now it's a matter of going back and refining and figuring out what is a different way to approach this problem, and how do we find a new opportunity to reach them. Thank you so much for sharing. Any thoughts or comments from the group? Okay, good. If you have any feedback for Carrie, please feel free to drop it in the chat so that she can pick that up and use that for her ideas. Okay, let's see. We also have then Corinna. Am I saying your name right?
Yes, you're saying it beautifully. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good.
Doesn't happen very often, so I'm really...
All right, if you want to go ahead and talk us through,
okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm here with the Environmental Data Initiative, and our value proposition is that the Environmental Data Initiative maximizes the impact of data from environmental scientists of all levels of expertise by providing curation and help desk services, educational opportunities, and a robust and modern data repository to make all data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable.
Great.
So that was quite a mouthful. And maybe a few things on the background, that we're in an interesting situation that we're selling a product that people don't necessarily want, or at least the people who are our targets, because that involves some work to them. The people who want it are the funders. The sort of the general idea is that data should be publicly available by now. But obviously what we need is the environmental scientists who will actually go through and document the data, which is a lot of work, and then publish them with us. So we have two lines here in the spreadsheet. The first one is the basic, which is the audience is the environmental scientist, that we hope to publish their data with us, or use data by downloading them from the repository and then analyze them in their research. So the value to them is that the data set is safe, it won't go away, and it will outlive them, hopefully, and that it is a citable unit. So if other people download it, use it, and cite it, then eventually the scientists should get credit. All of this is currently being built in the community and not 100% there. So the channels that we have been using to advertise EDI is conferences where we have booths and the whole 9 yards of one-pagers, business cards, and chocolate. Very important to get anybody.
That always helps.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We have a newsletter, we have a website, we obviously have our data portal where people can go that people know pretty well. We have extensive training materials on YouTube. We do regular webinars. We what else? We have training material on the website that people can read. We're now planning a graduate seminar, which will run at 3 universities next semester. And then we have our data fellowships, which are undergraduates, or actually the whole range. We have had young professors ask if they could do it, where they, in the summer, will go to a certain field station project, anything to actually archive a data set for them. And we train them. And so that has now run three times and has been extremely successful because people are getting hired out of that like immediately. So the success measures that we have used so far, and I have to say that we have gotten one renewal already from NSF, while the whole data management approach in this group is really 40 years old, and it has been supported by NSF for 40 years, off and on, different ways, all sorts of approaches. But what we now hear from NSF that our measures of success are a number of data sets, citations, and papers. And there, I'm not a good number person, but I think we're at about 800 or so, because it's not an established practice. People do not cite their data sets or put a DOI for a data set into their papers yet. So we're still working on that one too. So it's not only that they are not using it, but they're not citing them. So we can't tell whether they are using them or not. Then, of course, the number of data sets that are in our repository, and that, depending on how you look at it, is up to 22,000 right now in all their revisions. In our metadata, we asked people to put in the NSF awards that these data were produced under. And so another number is how many NSF awards we have served with our data repository. Then, of course, data providers. So those are the creators of the data set. And then one of the things that our NSF program officer tells us is that if other people tell him that we're very useful, then he really likes that.
Yeah.
So I've told him about SGCI too, that I really love this thing.
Well, thank you. Good. Yeah, we know that metric matters, right? It matters for all of us. So appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is great. You know, so what I want to think about is how do we narrow it in a little bit? Because right now, if you walk through it, it's addressing the big picture of EDI and its purpose and who it serves. But
Right.
Let's think of this in terms of like one marketing campaign. So what would be like one goal in particular that you would want to solve? Like one action that you want to take care of?
Honestly, what I need to figure out is, what are we offering that somebody is willing to pay for?
Okay.
I mean, right now, if we either pay for data upload or data download, our customers are going to say, forget it. I'm just going to ask my friend and he'll email me the data. Well, I don't need a data repository for that.
Yeah.
That's how it has worked for the last 50 years.
Yeah. So it's a problem of trying to figure out what thing will they pay for.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is a goal.
Yeah. So that I would probably address in a very different way. I would look at, kind of figuring out what other services aside from what they already do that you could provide on top of maybe that they would be interested in. But if we were to think of, let's say you take the problem of you're trying to get more people to add their data. Let's say you want to get more environmental scientists to add their data to the repository. What would be the way of making that happen? What channel, like how would you communicate to acquire more people that are putting in their data?
I think, well, I don't have any new idea. So
Okay.
The channels that I've listed there is what we do.
Yeah.
There are some that are probably more successful than others.
Mm-hmm.
I think small meetings are generally more successful, and the word of mouth is getting around a little better than going, say, to ESA.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I think I would do is what might be a good first step actually is because you have a lot of channels there, I would dissect those channels and figure out what results are you getting from them. So if you, let's see, so if
But
we
how,
say,
how would we find that out? That's part of my question. So
Yeah.
how would I ever find out where somebody found us and then decides, oh, I really need to archive my data right now?
yeah, so this goes along with some of the things that we've talked about before of what information are you collecting on your users and how are you figuring this out, right? So it might be through a survey. Maybe to all of your users, you put out a survey so that you can get at least a little bit of information back of how did you hear about EDI, or where did you learn about our services, kind of thing, so that you can get a gauge on what is working. Or you can start to do, as you're just talking to customers naturally, right? They're reaching out to you through help tickets or whatever other ways they might be reaching out. Just toss that question in on the end. Say, by the way, can you tell me how you heard about us or how you learned about it, right? So that you could start to figure out which things are working well, right? And what things are helping you collect that information on them, or what things are helping you get them to become users, so that you can start to put more effort, right? Because that's what this is really about, is figuring out where do you focus your energy and your effort? Because we don't want to just keep throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and hoping that it sticks. Like, we need to know that it's going to stick so that we're spending our time in the right kind of way. So by measuring them, right, we can then focus our energy on those particular things and make them hopefully happen a little bit more. So,
well, we've certainly learned
Juliana,
that.
if I could.
We've certainly learned by now that a virtual booth and all these virtual meetings currently does not work at all.
okay, all right, yeah, that's
money.
That's good to know, right? So now you know not to not to put your energy there for your particular solution. Yeah, Nancy, go ahead.
So, like, if we take a step back from this marketing conversation, it assumes that one of the problems that you're having is just getting the word out to people. That the function of marketing is you've got this thing, it's an idea or a concept or an ask, and people don't know that you're asking yet. So there's always an awareness piece. The idea is people are out there, and if only they knew and we expressed this to them, we could somehow convince them, persuade them to do what it is that we want them to do. But what, Karina, you're noting is a little bit trickier. You're noticing that even when you reach them, they may not be doing that thing. And so Juliana's point is like pretty profound. She's really saying you may have to step way back to that audience and user assessment piece to ask those questions. Let's ask the really tough questions. What are people doing today? Where do they put their data? If they're not depositing it with you, and are they happy with it? We had a comment in the chat that suggested a lot of libraries have taken this on. Now, surely they don't do it as well as a disciplinary specific repository might, but maybe they do it just well enough for researchers to do it and move along with their lives. So it might be one of those good enough substitutes that's going to be very problematic. So this, to me, suggests Juliana's nudge towards let's talk to users again and figure out what they are doing and what obstacles might be. And let's also do another landscape scan and see what people's alternatives are and figure out if those are really going to be major obstacles. I don't mean to sound negative, but it may help you sharpen what you guys do that's different from what's out there and see if it matters to your users enough to do what you want them to do.
Yeah, I'm afraid, we know the landscape, and yes, that is the problem because there are data repositories who require a lot less metadata. So it's a lot less work for people to just dump the data, as you say, good enough.
Yeah.
Good enough for people to move on.
This is a problem. Michael, I know I saw you had your hand up, so I'll get to you right after this comment. So this is a problem that everybody has. We have worked with so many teams that are saying, I need my users to do this thing, right? They need to put in their metadata. I want them to use my repository to make it more reusable and easier to reuse data and all of that and make it available to others. But there is this extra step that they have to take. And I have not figured out yet what is going to motivate them. and maybe we need to all take that on as a project together to figure out what is going to motivate them. But this is not just a problem that you're having. Everybody is having this problem with their repositories, and we got to figure out what is going to motivate our researchers to take that extra step, right? Like, what is going to convince them that it's not just good to do for science and humanity, but it's important to do for themselves, right? Because that's what we really care about, is ourselves, and we're only going to do stuff that we want to do. So, all right, Michael, thank you, Corinna, for sharing. We appreciate the example. All right, Michael, go ahead.
This is an issue that Corinna brings up that is common to us and many other people, especially data repositories. And one of the things you mentioned, Corinna, is something we also are interested in, is getting people to cite your data and then figuring out, who all's doing it, who's citing it. And so a common strategy that might help all of us is if somebody here or some of us could figure out, we need to get our repositories recognized by Google Scholar. And we're working on this. We have not solved this. So that each of your entries in your data repository, each of our model entries in our repository shows up as a publication in Google Scholar. Then as soon as that happens, then everybody who does cite it suddenly shows up, and the data and the fact that it's been cited shows up in their Google Scholar profile, and they can see who all's been citing their data. And they can see that perhaps if they put their data with you, then they will get more citations for their data, and it can show up and they can start getting counts. These are small things, but these are things that are important to individuals and that they can show professionally and things like that. And just this is such a huge common issue. If we could, as a group, figure out some way to solve it, I think it didn't solve everything, but it would help, is my point. It actually give us more information about our users and provide maybe a little bit of this feedback to get people to do the thing that's extra work.
Yeah, that's great. You're getting some excellent responses on that, Michael. It looks like people are very interested. So yeah, Masha, go ahead.
So just to continue, and again, this is something we've been all thinking about. I've been trying to motivate, and I think the only people I'm successful are my own students, is put data sets on your CV. Especially their CVs are a little slimmer. You're a graduate student, you're putting things, looking for things to put on CV. And I said, okay, these are my published data sets, and citations with DOIs and everything should be on there. And I think along the same line, I think we need to, it's like asking people to exercise. We all know exercise is good, right? But you need to have a little carrot and stick thing to make you do it. So I think maybe money is better spent. This is in response to Corinna's comment that booths at the conferences are only so successful. Maybe money is better spent giving an award or some sort of a money to a graduate student that publishes data in your repository along with their PhD thesis. And you can have maybe like a prize every August or something. If they can prove that they've done that, you have a drawing or something. That's something that I've been trying to think about, how to reward. And I think students are the answer. They're the next generation.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And they're actually the ones who are uploading the data most of the time. Right?
Yeah, that could be something interesting. Maybe that there's a motivation that there isn't one that exists right now, maybe, to get them to actually do it. So creating new opportunities could be interesting.
And students will do, the same amount of money goes a longer way in students' budget than it does in yours.
Much longer, right? Much longer. You give them $500 and they're happy.
So where I think we all need to work on is getting this into the promotion process. Yes. Data sets in the promotion process. That will be a very important step.
But this is a question to all of you. Do you have data sets along with your journal publications and your conference publications and whatever else, software, whatever else that you put on your CV? So, and then you have to say, well, this is what I'm doing. Are you doing the same? And then hopefully Google Scholar will catch up. If we can figure out how to talk to Google, I've actually attempted back in the day when there was no Google datasets, have been trying to reach them or talk to them or find who to talk to. They don't respond. They move on their own schedule, and this is not a moneymaker for them. So,
Yeah. All
so
right,
I
great.
think as some sort of a group, we should try to attempt.
Yeah.
Google Scholar would go a long way, or Orchid maybe. Orchid, everybody can enter their data sets in Orchid. You can import them.
Good. Well, this is good. I like the conversation, and I'm sorry to interrupt it, but I do want to make sure that we get to the next piece of our exercises here, so that I can share a little bit more information with you to hopefully be helpful in moving forward. So feel free to keep looking at that spreadsheet, look at other ideas that people have, add to it, edit it however you like. Hopefully that'll be a good target for you. So I just wanted to bring an example kind of to light here to make sure that I also leave a touch of reality with you all when it comes to these campaigns. And it's not a reality that I like to bring to your attention, because it's much more fun for us to live in La La Land, where we host an event and tons of people come and everyone adopts our solution. But that's unfortunately not how the world of sales and marketing works. But this is just to give you an idea of what kind of outcomes you might have here. So this is just an example of a conference, right? That actually is probably going to be one of the most widely attended conferences when they have it again, because it's for respiratory therapists, which but that might be like the big one right now, right? People working on ventilators. So, but at a conference that conveniently was located in Las Vegas in 2018, if you present there, this is like moving them through the funnel, right? If you were to try and move a group of people through the funnel, you might start with a presentation at a conference. And if you have 100 attendees, right, that's great, good, happy to have that many people there listening. The results usually fall kind of in the order below. So you'll see that about 80 people might understand and get what it is that you're trying to do if you communicated it effectively. And maybe about 80% were actually paying attention. Then 40% might move into that consideration phase. So they're actually going to schedule a meeting with you, or go to your website, or look at your resource in some kind of way, read a paper about it or something. Now, ultimately, though, what the standards look like is that about 3 people that attended that talk, so 3 of the 100, will actually move to the purchase and decision-making process of buying using your solution. So 3%, that is what is the cold call rate, right? So this is the idea that if you were reaching out cold to people, the response rate can usually be, for a good salesperson, is about 3%. This is a little bit of a warmer scenario, right? You've kind of warmed them up, you've moved them into your funnel a little bit. And so you might get a little bit better rate than that. But I always want to be clear that these things don't happen automatically, right? These movements of people becoming users and adopting your product and becoming advocates and evangelists for you doesn't happen easily on its own. It's something that you have to do for them, right? It's a movement that you have to push them through to make. So just be aware that, right, that it's always, even if you're doing it well, it is always going to be harder than you think it's going to be. And the results are never going to be something amazing, right? You're not going to send out a newsletter to 1,000 people and suddenly 800 new people have put all their data sets on your site. There's no magic button or magic words that you could say in that newsletter that's going to make that happen. But we want to get as close to that effect as possible, right? So just be aware of what the realities might look like in that scenario. Okay, I'm going to open my chat back up in case anyone has any questions there. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do here is just talk through the selling process. So I'm going to talk through this pretty quickly because it's just a little bit of information for you. The more important thing that I want to get to is the exercise at the end. So we're going to have a fun little breakout session exercise that we're going to do with each other to wrap up this session. But I do want to introduce you kind of to this selling process. So there are these 3 different ways that people psychologically make a decision, right? So when they're actually going to make a buying decision, and again, when I say buying decision, they may not be paying for anything, right? But this is a decision to actually like adopt what it is that you're doing. So there is the technical piece of it, right? So this is just that the product or service that you have has a better outcome for them, right? It's better or different in some kind of way that means something to the user. And so they're technically interested in it for that reason, right? So this is things that we typically see people easily adopt because it makes such a big difference to them in their lives in some kind of way, right? So if you think about online banking, right? This was like an easy thing for people to adopt because it just made such a huge difference. I didn't have to physically go there and do things at the bank anymore, right? I could just do it online. There's also this psychological, emotional piece of it, right? So there is an emotional appeal. There can be an emotional appeal. So you can think about, do you have some kind of emotional attachment or investment that people care about that would make them adopt your product? And then last is this kind of business economic piece of it. Is it just really makes financial sense for them. So, and when I say financial sense, this could also come in the form of it saves them time. So it might not just like make them money or save them money, but it could save them time. It could save them labor. It could save them a headache of some kind, right? So that it makes some big difference for them there. So I also want to talk to you about, we've danced around this kind of customer discovery stuff a little bit throughout the past 2 weeks for those of you that have been involved in Focus Week. And I kind of just want to reiterate the importance of that and the role that it can play and the things that you can do with it to make a difference for your organization. So I like to use the example of Febreze. It has a very interesting story. I know that this may seem like really stupid and bland, but it has a very interesting story that I like to share and the importance of that customer discovery process. So this customer discovery is this thing that we keep telling you to do of like, just go talk to your users and find out from them, because they're going to be the ones who can give you the clearest answer, right? They're going to be the ones that you can get that information from. And Febreze kind of famously has used this technique as a way to really build their customer base. So here you just see some current language and then some former language or current customers there that they used to actually use for Febreze when it first came out. So Febreze was a P&G product, and they had an okay uptake at the very beginning. It actually was pretty minimal. They were going to pull the product off the shelves because they just weren't selling, for P&G as much as they would usually sell of their products. So they were going to actually take it off the shelves and not sell it anymore. And what they had was their current marketing language they were using was kind of this cleans fabrics, removes odors, and it's odorless. But when they actually went and talked to their users, what they found out was that the users used it as a reward to when they finished cleaning, right? So I just cleaned my whole house and now I'm going to spray this stuff because it's like now everything smells good and it feels like it's like that finishing touch that you have, right? So the first thing that they did was they changed their marketing language based on that. Now they did get an increase in users from that. So their product did start to go up, but still not enough. They were actually still considering pulling it from the shelves. Then they had a team go in again. And this time they decided to talk to people who were not currently using the product. And they wanted to find out why they weren't currently using the product. So for those of you who are Office fans, The Office, you may be familiar with this character, right? So she is from The Office, and she had a lot of cats, right? So she's a big cat person. So there was this customer interview where the marketers went into this person's home and they were trying to understand why they don't currently use Febreze. So they walk into the house, and one of the marketers in the article actually explains that she started gagging when she walked into the house because it smelled so bad that she could barely even stand being in this house. This woman had about 8 cats and apparently did not do the greatest of job cleaning up after them. So when they're talking to her about the Febreze product, she says that she doesn't use it. And she says, "Isn't it great? My cats don't even smell." Mind you, the marketer that's in there is currently gagging because it smells so very bad. So if you're familiar with this ad campaign that Febreze implemented, came from that. It was this idea of going nose blind, right? You don't smell the bad smells that are in your house because you live there. So you're not familiar with what other people might be smelling. So this was a way for them to capture an entirely new market. Within a month's time, their sales grew over 300%. And now Febreze is one of the top producing P&G products. So this is really just a good story of ways that you can learn from your customers and your potential customers that are not using your products and figure out why they aren't and identify the right value proposition to focus on for them, right? There wasn't a value proposition there for the cat lady. She didn't see a problem, right? She didn't recognize a problem. So they had to help her identify it. Now, whether or not they helped her identify it, right? And all of those different things, yes, we can go into, that might be the evil side of marketing that we aren't going to discuss, right? We're not doing that part. But this is a good reminder for that. So just thinking about customer discovery, there can be two different ways of looking at customer discovery, and I'm just going to put these out. So it could be one of these two things, right? It could be this fact-finding mission. So when you go talk to your current users, it could just really be about better understanding the problem that they have, confirm that you're targeting the right segment of customers, and developing those personas to really understand them and use the language that they're using, right? So this learning to speak their language aspect, where you want to understand how they talk about the problem, not how you talk about the problem. And that really indicates how you should market to them, right? Using this term of going nose blind was a huge hit for them. And they were able to use that across many different customers. But it was just a matter of helping them identify the problem that was there and how they should market to this new audience. So in this selling process, you're going to have an ask, right? You're going to be asking people to do something. Now, when we moved through the marketing strategy segment, some of you I saw had put like face-to-face meetings or one-to-one opportunities as a way to think about how you might reach your audience. These are kind of the steps that would be involved in that conversation. So you need to first identify the need that they have, propose a solution. So this is talking about your value proposition. Highlight the features and accent the benefits. So what is it that's really significant for them that you have? That could be specific features or functionality that they might care about. And then you want to actually move to closing. So this is actually making that ask, right? Saying, will you put your data set here? Will you give a testimonial about why you love this product so much? Will you provide institutional support so that I can get, an FTE to be able to work on this project? Whatever it might be that you're trying to convince someone to support. This is always going to be kind of that format that you're going to go in. So what I would like to do is we're going to move into breakout rooms. There's going to be, I think, about like 3 or 4 people in each breakout room. And I'm going to have you each pitch to each other. So you want to first identify, so using the marketing strategies document that we used earlier. So you had identified an audience and something that you want them to do, right? So you want to move them through that sales process. So identify who the person is that you're talking to. So I'm talking to my department head, or I am talking to an environmental scientist, or whoever it might be. And then I want you to use these steps, right? Identify the need, the value proposition, the features and functions, and then ask them to do the thing that you want them to do, closing with that final ask. And then you're going to get some feedback on it from the other people in the room. Okay. So this is going to be really quick. 1 minute to pitch.
Can you back up to the previous one that lists all those things?
Yes. Yeah, so you'll have 1 minute to pitch, and then about 2 minutes for feedback for each person. And then, and then we'll all come back together and we'll close up our session. Any questions? Please don't be nervous about this. This is just a fun exercise, but it's a way for you to start talking about these things out loud and share them with other people to get some feedback, right? This is a safe place for you to share this stuff. All right, so Claire, Nighty, whoever's driving back there, if you can please go ahead and 3 to 4 people in each room. Hello, everybody, you're coming back. Hopefully you weren't in the middle of a sentence when you got pulled back in, but chances are you probably were.
We only were able to get one presentation.
Oh no!
Yeah. What kind of software? We're just finding out the last person. So I was going to ask Jen, what kind of software were you talking about? I missed that.
It's like processing radar and LiDAR data. So
Okay,
converting
great.
it.
Yeah, I really want to know where that site is.
Yeah, gateway.elrose.net, I think.
Yeah, great. Okay. So it looks like we got everybody back in the room. I hope that was, kind of an enjoyable exercise for everybody, and you had, it's intended to be fun. So I hope you at least had fun. So does anyone want to share, like, do you really owe them $1,000 now? Yes, Tom, you owe me $1,000 right now.
You weren't in my sales.
I will send you my banking information. So does anyone want to share, like, how did that go? Did you have interesting asks? Do you feel like you knew who you were talking to and what you were asking for? Any thoughts or feedback are welcome.
Well, our group was, we had the first presentation was, then we all had lots of questions for her, to help. So we ended up, it was really helpful, but we did only one presentation.
Yeah. Timekeeping is challenging. That's for sure.
Yeah, the timing was way too short for us anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else?
I just want to share that it's really difficult to think of an ask sometimes, like in the role that we're traditionally in. Sometimes, for me, I'm just not used to being like, okay, I am going to ask for this from this person. Can you please do that? And not be apologetic or anything, just like, oh, can you please do that?
Yeah.
The language for that is kind of difficult for me.
Yeah, that it is a hard thing to do, right? It's a hard thing, especially if it's going to take them more time, or they're going to have to do something that maybe they don't like doing. But I think the importance of that is really you need to build in the value piece, right? So really focus on that value, what value it brings to them, right? Why is it important for them to do it? Why is it important to them to do it, right? That way, when you make the ask, it's much easier to move them to say yes, right? Because they at that point want to, because you've identified for them why it should be important to them, why it is important to them. And again, this is like that hard motivation thing, right? Like, of how do we motivate scientists and researchers to do these things that maybe they don't love doing, but is very beneficial to the entire community. So I would think about, though, like, what value can you pinpoint for them that once you make the ask, it doesn't feel that way because they're excited about it now, right? Or they're happy to do it because they see the value for themselves.
So that's my comment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess the way I look at it is that whole minute was the sales pitch where you've given them the value.
Mm-hmm.
And the ask is, what's the commitment from them?
Yep.
And so it was interesting in our chat that I said, I have a 3-minute video that I put together for an NIH proposal. And so it was a very specific time commitment that I was asking. So 3 minutes, all you got to do is go to this website, click the button. And so I guess being able to let people know as part of the ask exactly what they have to put up. 3 minutes, $1 million, whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the clarity of the action. Being very clear about what it is that I need you to do or I want you to do right now, right? So that way it's not left ambiguous, because I could just share a bunch of information with you about my gateway, and I could tell you like the nice things that it does and why those things are nice. But now if I'm not kind of proposing that ask or saying what that action should be, I'm kind of leaving it to them to hopefully figure that out on their own, right? And that takes extra brain power. And people, you know, it might not be the thing that's top of mind for them or something that they're thinking of right away. But if you say, all you have to do is this, or if you do this, right, this is what you'll get out of it kind of thing, that at least makes it very clear what the action is that you want them to take, that you need them to take. And then, right, you can measure that based on success level. I told a bunch of people about this thing. I asked them to do it. How many people actually did it? Right? And then we can maybe figure out why the other people that didn't do it, and then figure out how we clear up that missing piece there. I think though, you're right, Leslie, it's just one of those things that's always a little bit hard and awkward, and it'll just take time to get there. Okay, well, thank you all so much. This was wonderful, meeting some new faces and seeing our Focus Week participants again. Tomorrow, we will have our final presentations from our full participants. Claire is going to be emailing some information if you would like to attend those just as an audience member to view and encourage your other cohort members. And then I think Claire has some closing information.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Juliana, and thank you all again for participating in this virtual offering of Focus Week, and also if you joined us today for the webinar, being able to experience the sales and marketing segment offered during Focus Week. Just since this is a part of the SGCI webinar series, a couple of reminders. This will be updated and added into the archive of webinars, so you can come back here and watch them. And we'll also include the template that we worked through earlier in the session, so you can use that as well. There is an ask to join us on January 30th or 13th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific for Seed Me Lab. We'll hear from Amit, who is a project director at the San Diego Supercomputer Center, about his gateway. Also, there's an opportunity for students, if you work with students that would like to engage with Science Gateways, I would encourage you to check out the link posted on this slide. And as always, there's some opportunities through SGCI to engage with this existing community through a Google form, and also sign up for the newsletter as a way to stay in touch. And I know Catherine's been posting in the chat throughout our session today. There is a survey that is available right now. Please take a moment to fill that out. It will be very impactful for Catherine and the SGCI team to see how you appreciated the webinar today, and also make some suggestions on other webinars. Even if you want to offer your own webinar, that might be a good opportunity to pursue. Speaking of opportunities. But with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up, and we'll be talking to the full teams here in about 30 minutes. So enjoy your break, everyone, and we'll be back in a little bit.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.